off the rails, going off. If any of you are musicians, I'd love if you made a theme song for us. Hey everybody, for this week's Off the Rails episode, I'm going to share another chapter in full from my course, Shooting 101 Photography Fundamentals. This is the very first chapter in the composition module called Rule of Thirds. If you're interested in learning more about this course, you can visit 52frames.com/course. I hope you enjoy. Okay, on to our first official rule of photography, the rule of thirds. The rule of thirds is usually the first rule that you learn in photography. If you were to go to a photography class, this would probably be lesson number 1. There are photography rules that I do really appreciate, really agree with. Some of these rules we're going to get to in a moment. This rule, I think it's important to learn in the same sense that it was important for me to teach these fairly deep concepts, of light before we got to anything. I think it's important to learn in the sense that you understand that there are placements of objects, that there are rules of composition, that these things exist to keep in mind. As far as the actual rule of third, I'm not such a fan. Let's go through it, okay? I'm going to bring over what's called a thirds overlay, and you can see what's basically two lines intersecting, or a tic-tac-toe board for you Americans, I believe X's and O's for you non-Americans. And the rule of thirds basically states that the point of interest in your frame should fall under one of these intersection points, one of these 4 points here where the lines intersect. Now I'm going to draw a diagram in a second to make that a little bit more clear, but I've also seen a second description of rule of thirds where the point of interest should either be where these points intersect in these 4 spots, or it should just generally be along the lines or along the sides or the middle. I just said a whole bunch of crap, so let's open this into Photoshop and hopefully I can make this a little bit clearer and ease up on the sarcasm perhaps. I'm going to draw some straight lines here. Now this isn't going to be exactly the rule of thirds because I'm just drawing this by eye, but let me just show you the overlay here, okay? The point of interest that I was talking about before, we'll get a nice red circle here. Boom. Okay, we'll make that a little bit more apparent. All right, so these are the spots where the lines intersect, which means your point of interest should be somewhere in one of these 4 spots. Now, arguably, this sign does fall into the bottom left third there. So I could call this rule of thirds and we can say, well done. Other descriptions of the rule that I've seen have said that this also can apply to, let's call this your landscape line. We'll get like a brownie brown. And generally your landscape line should be, here's your landscape line, it should be the bottom 2/3, and then your sky, get a nice blue here, should be your top third. Okay. I don't know if this is rule of thirds. I personally don't think this falls under rule of thirds. I just want to cover all bases. If you go now and Google rule of thirds, you may get a few things. Don't get hung up on it. I think the most important aspect is, compositionally speaking, to understand that you don't want to place your subject directly in the center of the frame. Usually. You want to place your subject on the side. That's really, I think, the best way to describe it. This is a good rule to note, though, the 2/3 landscape, 1/3 sky, or less usual, let's say, a little bit more rare, is to have 2/3 sky and 1/3 landscape. But I digress, okay? Because others have said that the rule of thirds means that your subject should be along this thirds over here, or in the middle, or on the left side. I don't disagree with any of this. I don't know if that really falls under the rule of thirds. The way I was taught is just these intersecting points. I think it's a good thing, again, to keep in mind, to train your eye that there are geometric composition guides and rules that exist in order to achieve a more flattering image that will be more easily appreciated, enjoyed, and imbibed by the viewer, which is what photography is, okay? Let's just give you two more quick examples. We have our thirds overlay. You know, the pineapple doesn't quite really meet on that bottom right intersection, so what you can do is crop the photo so that it does. Is that a more interesting photo? Maybe. Actually, I think so. I'm not going to be this sarcastic moving forward. It's specifically the rule of thirds. It's like, it is a very valuable rule to learn because it does open your brain again to the notion that composition exists. You have to, keep these things in mind. But not my favorite rule. So here the leaf does fall into this third. And actually, as I'm noticing now, interestingly, the leaf kind of curls up just into this middle quadrant here pretty nicely, geometrically. So this is a nice composition overall. And if we had our leaf right in the middle, I think this is a less interesting composition. And I think this is a more interesting composition. In short, move your subjects over to the left or the right, or I guess your reverse. So the left, right. And avoid having them in the center. Hey everyone, this is Yosef from the future again. Oh, I probably sound different because I have a cold and my voice is like 3 octaves deeper than it usually is. But I was just editing this and I wanted to finish off this chapter a little bit less sarcastic than I feel I was when I was recording. Rule of thirds, like every other rule, is not a hard and fast rule. You don't have to place your subject on exactly those intersecting points, but it is a very good starting point. Placing your subject on one of these intersecting lines will generally look better than having your subject in the center or in another part of the frame. And following these general principles of rule of thirds is a really good and smart starting point. Next time you're shooting, let the rule of thirds be your starting point to your compositions. And more importantly, let the rule of thirds work for your style. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed. That was my take on the rule of thirds. If you are interested in learning more about this entire course, Shooting 101 Photography Fundamentals, that goes into more than 5 hours of composition fundamentals, shooting in manual mode, and an intro to understanding lighting fundamentals, you can visit 52frames.com/course. That'll be it for this week. Until next time, happy shooting.